Good evening. Welcome to our very first episode to Now You Know Talk Show, a social justice talk show, a talk show that talks about issues that matter most to us. We are talking about social justice issues throughout the episodes of Now You Know Talk Show. We are going to have special guests from all walks of life joining us through these very important conversations. We're going to have celebrities, politicians, everyday heroes, survivors, advocates, influencers, and changemakers. And we're just so excited that you are joining us tonight to start this very important conversation. My name is TIMEA E Nagi, and I will be your host this evening and throughout any other episodes for that matter. I am a social advocate, survival, and an author. And tonight we are talking about human trafficking. What is sex trafficking? How does it happen? Who does it happen to? Does it happen in our school as well? We're going to answer you all the questions in the next few minutes. So I'm going to introduce you to our very first and special guest of our Now You Know Talk Show, Dov Venter Horden, school counselor, national speaker, and founder of Fast One-on-One. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Dog.
Thank you for having me, Tamia.
Dog, I have my first question for you, which is, as a school counselor and someone who's working with teenagers for over the decade, what are your thoughts on the difference in between being a teenager today versus when we were teenagers?
So the internet is huge, and what I'm seeing now because of that is the ability to have relationships that can actually be extremely secretive and really anonymous. And in my day, that was almost impossible to do. So kids are connecting in ways that we never could growing up. And I think too, because of the internet and the accessibility of the internet, pornography has just exploded. It is accessible to anybody who has an internet connection. And I think stats say something like over 90% of males, they've been exposed to pornography before they're 18. So what I'm seeing in my office is the very skewed and unrealistic expectations in what is a perceived norm within these relationships.
I love that you're saying that. And I have one more question for you. What does that has to do with sex trafficking, do you think?
Well, I think with internet, you've got kids online, which then equals opportunity for traffickers. And then looking at the whole COVID pandemic that we're finding ourselves in, these kids are online more now than ever. I mean, even the education system, so many of our kids are doing it online. So they are behind closed doors, on their laptops, on their devices. For some kids, it's all day. And it's not all education that they're doing. So, with these kids online as much as they are, this is where the predators are hanging out. This is where the traffickers are hanging out, and kids are just vulnerable so much more now than ever before.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And before we move on to our next guest very quickly, but you're going to stay with us for the night to answer some more questions. And thank you for that. Um, how many times you heard the question, does it really happen in your town? So the school that's in your town is a population of 16,000. So if you can tell how many times you heard that question and how shocked people are when they learn that it is happening in small towns.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've been doing presentations in my school for a number of years now, just because it's easy and I'm there and they allow me to do so. But I always ask them, do you think this is happening in our country? And most of them put their hands up. Do you think it's happening in Ontario? Yeah, pretty much. We got some big cities in Ontario. Do you think it's happening in Kingston? Fewer hands go up. And then, like as you said, the community that my high school is in, you blink and you're through it. We're a small school. We only have roughly 400 students. And when I ask the kids, do you think it's happening in our neighborhood? And no one believes it's happening. And then I share the story that I'll share later. Um, just proves the point. It is everywhere.
Yeah, and you know what, Doc? I always say this: if you have highways, teenagers, internet, motels, and hotels, you will have sex trafficking. But we are going to thank you very much, Doc, for sharing your thoughts. We are going to go to our next guest, who is a retired law enforcement commander with Flathead County Sheriff Office from Montana. She was a task force officer with Homeland, as well as the member of the Internet Crimes Against Children. And she was also part of an undercover operations for years. Today, she is the director of special programs at Deliver Fund. And Deliver Fund, for those of you who don't know, it's an American organization made out of retired CIA, FBI, NSA, and military special forces. And from what I understand is that they're learning the same, and they're using the same technology that they used to use to hunt terrorists. They brought that knowledge back and using the same technology here in North America to hunt traffickers. So welcome, Ginny, so much. Thank you so much for joining us. And can you please tell us a little bit about your experience on front lines when you were an undercover officer? Who did pretend to be online and who was trying to communicate with you when you were pretending to be a 13 years old girl?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Timea. When I was working undercover operations online, there was times where I was portraying a juvenile who using random social media services. Other times I would take over juveniles' accounts that had been in conversations with perpetrators online.
Wow. I don't really know how you did that work, and I do know you're a parent as well. So just thank you so much for the work that you've done. And it goes to all the law enforcement officers who have done undercover and had to pretend and see the worst of the worst. So, but on that note, how did they talk to you and what did they ask you, Ginny?
Well, it was always the end game. They always wanted some type of sexually explicit images or they wanted to meet in person. All conversations generally center around exploiting the child for some type of sexual gratification.
Well, you know what? When we prepared for this interview, what struck me is that you said they were so incredibly persuasive. And I remember working with the federal police in Canada, and they went undercover too. And the female officer came out and said, if I didn't know any better at the age of 30, I would have gone with this guy and left everything behind. You said you had moments like that too when you're like, it was hard enough for me, let alone a child. Can you just can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when you're engaging with these individuals online, some of them they're extremely savvy, they're persistent, and at times they're very aggressive. And I found myself as, an adult dealing with some of these conversations, the monumentous pressure that these offenders would place on myself. And I had the skills to be able to step back, re-engage, and it always concerns me for our children because if I, as an adult who's been doing this business for, a number of years, would feel those pressures or what these people lay at your feet or the guilt trips, it concerns me for our children if we don't prepare them how to deal with these types of things and how to say no or how to disengage.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much, Ginny. Please stay with us. We are going to have some questions at the end of the show. And right now, we are going to take a very quick break. And when we are coming back, we are going to show you, parents, caregivers, and kids, how a predator can find you, your bedroom, to the point where your school bus stop is, where is your best friend lives, just from posting one single picture online. We'll go back. And tonight we are talking to parents and kids about sex trafficking, online safety, cyber trafficking. So let me just give you a little bit of a background on sex trafficking and why the age group of between 12 and 25 years is the most vulnerable to become a victim of this terrible crime. So let's start with actual a research study that was done by Stanford Children and Health Study. This is what they are saying. It doesn't matter how smart your teens are and how much they scored on the tests. Good judgment isn't something they can excel in, at least not yet. the rational part of the teen's brain isn't fully developed and won't be until the age of 25. In fact, recent research has found that adult and teen brains work completely differently. Adults think with the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and that is actually connected to the rational part. So teens process information with the amygdala. I think that's how you say it. If not, that was my Hunglish. Welcome to our channel. This is the emotional part of the brain. In teens' brains, the connection between the emotional part and the brain and the decision making center is still actually just developing, and not always at the same rate. So that's why when teens have overwhelming emotional input, they can't explain later what they were thinking. They weren't thinking, they were feeling. And guys, that is exactly the reason why sex traffickers are actually going right after this age group. So let me tell you a little bit about uh, human traffickers. So in North America, we have different type of human trafficking, but tonight I really would like to focus on domestic sex trafficking. So within domestic sex trafficking, the traffickers could be pretty much anyone. Unfortunately, in the last few years, human trafficking and sex trafficking became a very predominant criminal activity simply because there has been a lot of books, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of education, believe it or not, from pimps started to appear online how to do this. This is like the next cool thing, the next new thing. This is like the next drugs or whatever you want to call it. Drug dealers and other criminals are switching into start human trafficking industries and businesses because it's actually very lucrative. So, who are our victims? And I just described that to you. Anybody in between the age of 11 to 25, girls, boys, it doesn't matter. The reason why they go after you because you're super, super vulnerable. And they use all kinds of tricks on you guys. It is in their textbook. They actually watch you online. They read everything you do. They find out where you are, who your friends are, how you feel about yourself. And the moment they feel like that they can jump in and make you feel better, better than anybody else in your world right now, that's what they're going to do. They're going to start talking to you. They're going to become your best friend, the best listener. And the next thing is history. But we haven't really told you about what the next thing really is. The next thing is once you get lured and taken away from your surroundings, they put you in isolation in a way. But they're not going to tell you you can't call home anymore. They're just going to tell you, why would you call home? They don't care about you. They really become the only voice in your head, and that's their only goal. So what happens is when you go away from home, by this time you're listening to today's music and pop culture, and everything around you is telling you to look fantastic, look perfect, listen to this music, watch that music video. Everything around you is giving you this fake idea of a lifestyle that's out there that you think you want. But the truth is, that's not real. Everything these guys and girls show you online, it's not real. They don't have the real money to do this. And if they do, they actually doing it from terrible activities like making you or girls like you, your friends, working 15, 17 hours a day in hotels serving men. So once you're away from your home, and once they know that you're not going back and you burned all the bridges, they may have a picture of you or a video where you did something inappropriate. They're going to start pulling that over your head and say, you want to go home? Go ahead. I'm going to post this picture on your Facebook or Instagram. Once you get into this lifestyle, which we call the game, that's the name for it, it really, really is very hard to go back. And I know that there's a lot of pressure out there for you guys to look perfect. And I know this is the new cool. There's so many names for it: escort, whole, that lifestyle. But I'm telling you guys, this is not nearly as fancy and glamorous as it seems. Our next guest is Matt Richardson, social media and online safety expert who have presented to children and adults, service providers, corporations on online safety for years. Matt's knowledge on social media in general actually scares me, but the way he puts it, knowledge is power. We are so, so glad to have you with us, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tamia.
Matt, you have encountered several real cyberbullying and recruiting cases during your investigations. Can you show us a real life example of how the traffickers lured the girls and boys into sex trafficking online today?
I have two very specific examples of current and modern lures that are being used. And I've learned about them by monitoring communities and forums where online predators and human traffickers tend to share tips. The first one is the white knight. And it's as simple as this. And young lady who goes on to, let's say, Instagram and posts a nice, cute selfie. Maybe it's a new haircut or a new outfit. What they will coach you to do online, if they think you're one of them, as they did with me, is they will say this: Matt, go on there and you create, um, take one of your Instagram accounts, your fake ones, your anonymous ones, and say the most hurtful, mean spirited things you can imagine. Call her a pig, call her gross and dirty and fat. Then wait a few minutes and then log back in under a different account with a different profile picture. And then you are going to attack the bully. You are going to assail him. You're going to humiliate him, threaten him, and you're going to defend the honor of the young woman. Then you are to log back out. And then again, in a few short minutes, you log back in as the bad guy, the bully. You take down the comment, which gives the young lady the impression that the white knight saved the day.
That's incredible. You know what, Matt, the way you're explaining this, so I started teaching on domestic sex trafficking 10 years ago, which is when we recognized that there are books online written by pimps, former pimps and traffickers, on how to traffic and how to break down a girl's spirit to become a victim. And what you're describing is actually in the book, and there's an entire section on recruiting, and it's called the wingman. So now instead of doing it in the mall, they're doing it online. So that's exactly what they would do. They would go to a party and they would send in one guy to insult the girl. And then the white knight comes in and he saves her. And then he takes her away from the party, only that those two guys are actually working together. So it sounds like that the mall has moved online, wouldn't you say?
It's very much the same thing where you've got the bad guy and you got the white knight. He will save the day. It's manifesting differently online, but it's most definitely there, and it's hardcore. They take this very seriously.
Thank you. And Matt, what most parents and even kids that are watching this right now are absolutely dying to know from you: how on earth a predator can find out where I live, or even which room is mine in the house, or my best friend. I mean, these are the things you told me before we recorded. And it's very scary, and I wanted to give you the nickname called Boogeyman, but you're so nice, so we're gonna defer you away from that. But please tell us, how do they find us? And then later on, we are going to show you how not to get found online. Go ahead now.
Thank you. Yes, there are many ways, but I'll give you a couple of quick examples. One of which even shocked me. Um, number one, I'll start with social media posts can be geotagged, which, as you can see, will pinpoint the exact location where you are when you post on social media, your school, your home, your workplace. It's essentially everywhere you live, work, and play. Or, as the bad guys will call it, pattern of life. Where do you walk your dog? When? Where do you jog and when? Where do you ride your bike? It's all out there. I think that even more alarming is even photos that have never been shared online can be tracked to your exact location anytime you share a photograph or a video with somebody directly. If it's direct messaging, text, through gaming, through email, or any other direct, like me to you, peer to peer methods, I can see your longitude and latitude, your location, your geolocation. So no matter how safe and fun and good a picture is or a video, it can be traced to your front door. So when I look at some of the pieces here, I can see social media posts done at schools, at places the dogs walk, the yoga's done. Then it gets to the home. Okay. I can see where that home is on anything. Like just pick Google Street View. I can see that, and I can see the address number. And one particular example, as you'll see in the slide, is that house had been posted for sale within the last like several years. When I looked that address up on a free real estate website, I could see the kitchen, the front door, the back door, the front and backyard, bedrooms, upstairs, downstairs. In other words, it's way more information than you want somebody with malicious intent to know about you or your beloved family or children. So, in terms of that's a pretty disturbing fact. It just tells us that we need to be super careful about what we're sharing and who we're sharing it with.
Thank you so much, Matt. If I was a parent and watching this, I would take the phones away from my kids' hand, but I don't. And I don't want to do that for all the reasons what we talked about earlier. This is their life. This is their lifeline. This is the way the world is working right now. This is how we live. So we need to learn how to live and how to coexist with all the danger that online can bring. We can't just not be online. So thank you so much. We are going to take a very quick break. And when we are coming back from our short break, we're going to bring back Dog, and hopefully he can share that very informational story that happened to the very small town of Ontario, Canada. Doc, can you please share the story with us that happened in your school not very long ago to a very young lady, and please share the happy ending as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been in this small high school for a number of years now, and I really believe knowledge is power. I believe probably the number one preventative measure is getting this information to our young people. So one day, I arrived to work. We had at the time a number of group homes in our area, and I had a kid show up banging on my door, and I arrived at 8 a.m. while she's banging on my door, and she was in a panic, but a little excited. So I had her come into my office, and she was in care, so she was in a group home. And I asked her like, what is happening? And she just said, look, she called her sister. She's actually just a really, really good friend. But my sister messaged me on Facebook last night. Basically, let me read the message, full of red flags. And it was a lot like, I know you hate your circumstance. I know you like money. I know you like sex. We have a place for you. Don't worry about bringing anything. All this stuff. And the kid who messaged our student was missing. She went to another city in our area and then in a group home and then left. And nobody could find her, missing for about 3 months. And so she surfaced and messaged our student, which obviously our student was extremely excited about it, but nervous at the same time. So I asked her straight up, I said, like, do you think this is even your friend messaging you? And she said right away, no, not at all. It's her account for sure, but this isn't her. I said, how can you be so sure? And she said, I can just tell simply by her spelling. You know, these kids have a way, their own individual way of expressing and spelling. So she could tell right off the hop this wasn't her. So we again concluded, you know what, you're being lured into this. She recognized it first and foremost, did the amazing thing of letting me know what's going on. Again, I let my admin know, we let the group home staff know, we then let the OPP know. And then because this kid went missing from another city, they contacted their police, and they decided, because this kid was trying to set up a meet of our student to pick her up and then take her. So, and just get her out of her bad situation. So they decided to roll out this meet 11 o'clock in the morning on a Friday. Fortunately, this girl did the absolute right thing, notified the people in her circle, then notified police. Police rolled it out. And sure enough, that Friday, 11 a.m., car rolls up. The police kind of swoop in. They're able to get this 15-year-old kid who's been missing for months from another city, get her back in their care. after the investigation was done, they traced it back to a prostitution ring in Toronto. So, I say to the kids, knowledge is everything, like if this student didn't do the right thing and didn't recognize the signs and the red flags, uh, she could have been gone. She could have hopped in that car at 11 o'clock on that Friday and headed to Toronto and may never have seen her again. So it was a good ending, and but just it's scary.
It is, and thank you so much for all the education you've been doing for us, because not just for us, for all the schools. Like you said, education is the most important part of this, which is why we're doing this show. And Doug, you and I both know that there is many different way of luring and making promises for the girls and the boys. What would be the um, top act that they use in your opinion? If we need to kind of, there's many different way of recruiting. If you can just name us one style of recruiting, and then I'm gonna go to Matt as well to comment on that.
Well, again, I mean, most things I have seen has been the Romeo pimp, right? So the older boyfriend, either that or the girls who are a little older who are becoming friends with younger girls and introducing them to just the wrong people. But more times than not, it has been the Romeo pimp, that boyfriend who's early 20s, maybe 19, and is just kind of in this circle, but a little bit removed. Enough people know him, but just not really tight. And then this girl gets lured in, and
Rest we know.
yeah.
Thank you so much. And before we go to Matt, Ginny, what are your thoughts on recruiting methods? What other recruiting methods that you've seen that was done to you as a 13 years old when you pretended to be, or now through the work that you are doing?
Right. Certainly what Doug said was mostly the most prevalent one, the Romeo boyfriend, I'm going to help you. But one I actually saw quite a bit was um, that person who was the teacher or the guide that came in to provide something that the child was missing, whether it was questions they needed, help with. And, they would guide them and educate kind of, when children, when you're in school, you go to, sex education courses, or you have, your health courses. Well, these predators would take place in that. And they took it upon themselves to educate, obviously, for their own sexual purposes or own purposes to meet children.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. And as we keep saying this, a lot of things happen on offline, but a lot of these things actually play out online. So if we can bring Matt back, Matt, if you could just a little bit elaborate on the online looting recruiting methods human traffickers specifically are using today online.
I would begin by mirroring Doug and Jeannie. The Romeo and the mentor or teacher are the main ones I see, but a few in addition that I've observed. Number one is they're like a con artist. Okay, so they will like see a child that has a poor family relationship or hasn't seen daddy in 6 months. I'm using their words, not my own. If she has daddy issues, you need to be the protector, edgy, strong, and tough. Flatter her and make her feel safe with your offer of protection. And once you've done so, you can then begin to break her down. So that's one of the terms they use themselves is make yourself the protector.
Right,
Take the daddy, the missing daddy role.
right.
Another one I've observed pertains more to children that may be of the LGBTQ community or even just sexually curious and no one's answering the questions. They will do it if we don't. If we don't answer their questions, they're going to do it and they're just loving us for not doing it. One of them is I'll be the Romeo, the Juliet would be the same sex for a female. And in this context, the Romeo would be the same sex male partner and they will gladly strike up a friendship or relationship
Okay.
with a child that's confused about their sexual identity, questions about sexuality, and they will use that as a ploy to make them feel comfortable and good in their own skin and lure them and recruit them into sex trafficking. And something I've personally seen more times than I care to admit.
Thank you so much, Matt. And it was a great way to wrap up before the last commercial break. When we are back, we are going to have one more question for each of you, which is what can we do, all of us, to keep our kids safe online today? So, all of your subject matter experts, we would love to hear your opinion and your suggestions for parents and kids as well, how to keep yourself safe today online. We are back, guys, and we are about to bring Doug, Ginny, and Matt back into the conversation. So, Doug, I'm going to start with you, okay? What is your suggestion for kids in school today if they are experiencing this kind of activity online? What is your suggestion? How should they approach the school counselors if they have an issue?
Sometimes it's not the school counselor that a student actually connects with or has trust with. And I think that's why it's so important that our staff in our high schools are educated in this issue. Um, and if a school takes this on as part of their professional development, then they're going to have the confidence, should a student actually disclose. But talking directly to the students, you need to talk to someone you trust. If that's an EA in your school, if that's your teacher that you're seeing every day that you trust and come comfortable with, if it is your counselor in your school, whoever it is, honestly, sometimes the custodians have an amazing connection with students. And I think you need to just talk to someone you trust. And honestly, when that happens, be honest with them. Know that they're there for you and that you're not going to be alone as you disclose this kind of information and walk this out. And the thing is, too, I talk to a lot of people that I work with. If a student does disclose this to you and you feel like this is way over my head, um, students know that they are going to connect with people who can help. So the biggest thing for me is let students know that you got to tell someone you trust.
Thank you so much, Doug. I really appreciate that answer. And I have just one more quick question for you. What would you suggest for parents and youth workers who are watching this right now? How should they react and have this conversation if their kids or their loved ones coming to them with this issue?
Well, the thing is, if a kid is coming to you, it's because they trust you, right? So I think the biggest thing is to maintain that trust. Um, if a kid comes to you and they disclose some of these things, I don't think you necessarily even have to mention the word trafficking. I think most kids in this scenario don't even recognize the fact that they're actually being trafficked. They may be in an unhealthy relationship or just a bad situation and they're looking for a way out. So they're coming to you to just, can I get some help? So just maintain that trust. The other thing is safety and well-being is a priority. So if a kid discloses this stuff, I think we have to share with them, look, here are the steps that I need to take, right? These are some of the phone calls I may need to make. And you are the first one that I'm letting know that I need to do this stuff. But here's the thing. I'm not going to walk away. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to walk this out with you. I'm not going anywhere. And the last thing is just be open, be approachable, be a good listener. Don't assume anything and take your time for the process. Don't rush anything.
That's such a great advice, Doc. Thank you so much. And I know that it's a great advice and I know it works because we used to work on front lines and we used to coach families, and exactly what you said will work with the teens. So thank you so much. Jeannie, as a parent, knowing that you know today, how do you keep your kids safe at home? And if you could please give some safety tips to parents who are watching this tonight.
Boy, that's a tough one because it's a continual conversation that as parents we have to re-engage with our children, correct? I mean, social media, these different kinds of apps, they change daily. And these predators are way more perceptive than we are online. So it's daily conversations with our kids, allowing our children to educate us on what they're doing, who they're talking to, and then also teaching our children some basic, simple rules. If you're talking to somebody online and you don't know their name, you don't know their address, you don't know what school that they're attending, then they're most likely a liar. And it's okay to have these conversations. And then as a parent myself, I use some of the apps and services that were provided from, some of our service providers, Team Safe or, Verizon had the family safe. And I use that to monitor when I couldn't be available with our kids.
Wow, what a great and powerful advice, Jeannie. Thank you so much. I honestly think a lot of parents right now are watching and listening, and they're very grateful for your feedback. My last question is to Matt. Matt, what is your online safety expert experience suggesting for parents that they should do right now after this show? A safety future, anything that they can touch on that phone to make them feel better that they did something right tonight. Can you please give us two tips on how to get that device safer tonight so that we can all sleep well tonight?
Thank you for that. I know I get called boogeyman a bit. I gotta be honest. We've all had enough bad news. The reality is this: we already know as parents the majority of what we need to know. So we don't need to be worried about being technical experts or anything like that. If we are present and engaged and we know what our children are doing online, who their friends are, what apps and platforms they're using, maybe why they like it. And that's all stuff that we can use Google to learn. I feel like as a parent myself, we're going to know red flags or warning signs just by doing that. So I would say to parents, let's not worry too much about the technical part. I always hear that it is not where we should be placing our emphasis. The second part would be this. With the predatory element, the bad guy, they're kid savvy, they're tech savvy. But if we are aware of what our kids are doing and who they're conversing with online, then we're actually ahead of the game. And we don't need to worry so much about, being technical experts. And I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind. Further, if I look at the phones, I would recommend this. Who's on their friend list? Who's on their follower list? Do they know them in real life? And are there people on there offering to send like gifts or money, or do I have screen phone calls on my phone? Watch for those things. And if you see anything that does not seem normal, ask those questions.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate your answer. I know it's not exactly what parents wanted to hear, but this is exactly how you could probably start to have those safety conversations at home. And I want to thank so much for all of our subject matter experts tonight to joining us. And I do see a lot of great questions and comments. We had people tuning in from all over Canada and the United States, Plainfield, Indiana, Cornwall, Greenville, Guelph, Ontario, Kingston, Barrie. I think we have an entire group of people tuning in to voting for the guys, Matt and Doc from Kingston. We also had comments from Dallas, Texas. Jeannie, you have some fans over there. But it was a very important conversation to have tonight. And just one more thing I want to add. I have seen those comments a couple of times, and it is true, guys. Sex trafficking and victims of sex trafficking don't just come from one kind of background, meaning it doesn't just come from a broken home or poverty. Unfortunately, sex traffickers don't see that. They just see vulnerable teenagers. So that's why they zero in. It doesn't matter if you're a rich person or wealthier or upper or middle or lower class. It doesn't matter what your race or culture is, guys. Unfortunately, all they care is that you're a teenager, and this is why we explained in depth earlier what a teenager brain is, and traffickers know that. And this is why they find you online. And this is why we had tonight's episode to explain to you so that when your parents and your loved ones are telling you, be careful who you talk to online, you don't think they are cursed. Because now the boogeyman, which is Matt, telling you the same thing, and Ginny is telling you, and Dog is telling you, and I'm telling you. So look who's your friends are. Stop adding people. We usually do these presentations in schools, and we usually ask the kids, how many of you actually know your friends online? And they say, maybe I have real 5 friends, but I have 1,100 friends on Facebook. Do you really know them? So you already heard tonight. Just be safe, be smart, know who you're adding to your accounts. Try not to share too much about yourself. And definitely, please don't put your kind of day, what kind of a day you had online. So just now that you know, guys, now you know how to prevent yourself being sex trafficked. You heard enough information. And all I would like to ask you, if you could please share this message. We had a lot of emails coming in from a lot of people. We had 600 people registering, and they emailed and they said, when can they watch this later? So, what we are going to do, guys, we're going to leave this link up. So, what I'm asking you to do, please, if you enjoyed this conversation and if you think this was informational, please share it. Please, after this episode, go on your social media and share it with 5 of your friends, people who you think our parents should hear this, or people who you know that they have teenagers. And that's it, guys. You guys gonna be our social warriors, and you guys gonna help us spread the message. And before I let you go, we actually had some email questions about where can you guys take some more classes on human trafficking. So we're actually having a class for youth workers, parents, and schools counselors coming up. You can go on tconlineinstitute.com. Doug, I like your mug. Cheers. I know it's delicious. You distracting me. tconlineinstitute.com. Say it after me, Doug. tconlineinstitute.com. Good job. That's where you go if you would like to find education for parents. But we also actually going to have classes starting in November for social service providers and law enforcement. And comes January, we are actually developing classes and programs for transportation, hospitality, the financial sector, and the list just goes on. And before I let you guys go, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I hope you're going to tune in to our next episode, which is going to be November 20th. And our special guest going to be 2 survivors who have a story that belongs into Hollywood. One of the guests is actually one of the key witness and the main survivor of Canada's largest forced labor and human trafficking case from 2010. His name is Tomasz Miko. He survived the unthinkable, and he is the reason why he actually brought 13 people to justice and rescued 28 other members from his group. Tomasz became a journalist since then, speaks full English, and he will be here to share his story. He actually also, his first assignment was to interview the law enforcement police officers who rescued him. So that's going to be November 20th, and we hope to see you there. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please share with as many people as you can. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a good night.